same jail, that cell he was in. He made it to that cell. And he said, I was looking up, I was broken down. Didn't know where to go. Nobody listened to me. I was crying and, all those feelings that were going through me, hurt, all this stuff. No, nothing. Nobody listened to me. He said, I seen this picture on the wall. He said, you did a spiritual picture. Pencil art, similar to something like this, but a little different maybe. Mm-hmm. He said, I kept that. He said, you know what I did with that? He said, I used that in spiritual teachings of what I seen, what you drew here. He said, what's inside of there that went into my heart, made me see things, He said, made me get rid of all that anger and all that hate and jealousy, all that. All that went away, he said, because of you.
Who we are, through the smoke, through the sound, our heartbeat carries on, stand strong, voices rise from the earth to the sky. Neshanabe, Neshanabe, Bode Wadami, Neshanabe.
Today, we're here with Sam Alloway. He's the Forest County Potawatomi DA for the Division of Cultural Preservation. Sam, can you give us a little brief introduction about who you are?
Bonjour, Indigenous Kakegi Jik Makdodem Bodaway Wadami Neshanabe. My name is Sam Alloway, Division Administrator for Forest County Potawatomi Community.
That's good. I'm glad that you're here. Thanks for spending some time with us. The first question that we have is, you spent a lot of time working in the community. You were the security director in the past, and right now you are the division administrator of the Cultural Preservation Division. Can you tell us about your journey from those two positions and everything in between there?
All right. Well, I'll start out in around about 1995. I was hired as a security officer. I worked at 3 shifts. And as time went on, I was promoted from the executive council to be the security director. Louis Spouty at the time promoted me with a motion from council. And as time went on, I got to see a lot of things grow, even as a child growing up here all my life. The buildings that we stayed in, the tribal center is where we started out in 95. Then after that, some other buildings came in. And when I first started out was around about 1977, I'm going to say. I worked housing with Eugene Chano Sr., and he was my first boss and took us in as, summer youth at that time and, kind of showed us some things. But eventually, like, boarding school come along, and I got taken away and sent out, and a lot of us did at the time because of the discrimination in the schools, and it still exists today. And I hear a lot of stories with my younger kids telling me the same thing, and, old wounds just open up. But to me, I've learned to heal from them and kind of got stronger to fight back in a way. But there's a history of a lot of that. What interested me in security director at the time was the lands. We have a lot of lands, and worked along with various elders at the time. One was Jim Thunder. He took us out in the woods and showed us the boundaries and, homesteads, what took place there and what's still there, cultural resources and waters and all of this that we still protect today. Mm-hmm. Just learning about all of our stuff that we have here, what we protected day and night, and seen a lot of car accidents, seen a lot of death and tragedies and what all of our families went through. And we still kind of, face that today with grief, still grieving yet some of these things, and it's just ongoing. That's part of, where we gotta, come back together again and heal from that. It's just like boarding schools, we have to heal in a way so that we can continue on, make our families a lot stronger, but yeah, with the employment with that, I worked here all my life. And so,
Yeah, that was good. You mentioned Jim as one of your mentors. Did you have any other mentors that
oh
you looked
yeah,
at?
yeah. A lot of the elders before me, um, they would they first started out working on the tribal center because there was only one building here that we operated out of, and that was a tribal hall. And so next, the tribal center was built in around about 1975, 76. It was through a grant called the Bicentennial Year Grant. And with that grant, the tribe at the time, my grandfather, he was council member too at the time, and he asked all the war veterans in the tribe to let's build this tribal center for the people. So that's what they did. All the war veterans with that bicentennial grant built the tribal center, and not only that, they built a historical dance bowl that's down by Devil's Lake.
Mm-hmm.
But eventually, it needed maintenance. It fell apart and was torn down. But yeah, a lot of us started working, picking up garbage or going to houses. And I remember one time Eugene took me to the Thunder's house, and they had their own well, and there's like a certain water pressure you got to put in the well, and I put too much in there, and he didn't tell me how much, so I figured, I just watching them, and it was too much, and Scubby Gizik told us the next day, he said, yeah, those Thunder boys that got blown away down there. And we said, why? He said, you guys put too much, pressure in the shower and that come out stinging them, So, so we had to go back down there, and he had me take the cover back off and went in there, let the air out, and put the pressure gauge on it and put the right pressure in it. But we used to pull the whole thing out just to replace the motor, the pump that's like probably 60 feet in the ground sometimes, So.
Yeah, it's so interesting how we lived back then and to now, we don't have to worry about that. We have a whole...
I can also remember Billy Daniels, and his dad, Billy Jim, and Jim Daniels, we called Jim Megaby. I hung around with my grandpa a lot, them ones there, and, they used to sit on a wood pile, and they used to make us work, and, cut wood and stack it up and show us how to stack it, so when the snow came, that it wouldn't be all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
But we had like rows and rows of stacked, cut wood, and then we'll go to Billy Jim's and do the same thing, help him with his wood,
Mm-hmm.
stack it up the same. And some of those older guys, they'd be sitting there whittling, and they'd make me whistles, and then eventually after a while, I seen them making pipe stems and what kind of wood to use, and that's very important today. And there's things that they use out of that ash wood baskets, and then pipe stems. Ash wood is like the only one you can make pipe stems out of, next to sumac. They used to use too.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they used to have sumac tea, and that was really good when they baked that, yeah, hot summer and. But yeah, they would be cutting wood for the winter, getting ready. And Billy D, he came along. He was in a service too. After he got out of service, he started working for the tribe. I'm gonna probably say in about 76, somewhere in there, maybe 74. I'm not sure. Mm-hmm. But there was like only a few families here. There was Site 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm gonna say maybe 7 or 8 families here that were together, but there was extended families living with them too. So, those were like the only houses around you at the time. So that's when it started. They always told us that we're going to be rich one day, but they never knew, when. They'd say, yeah, you guys are going to be rich. You guys don't know it. And, now today it's changed quite a bit. I see it change in the culture too, But I still hung on to what I learned, from what they taught me. But after a while going to school, getting sent out to, Indian boarding schools, a lot of us did at the time. I think I'm going to say maybe 28 of us were all shipped out of here and taken away. Got out of there, then sent families down into the cities to work, and that didn't work either. A lot of alcoholism come from the city part, and, it brought back here and eventually affected us in a way again through the boarding school era. And, it was just ongoing. Mary D, she helped out a lot too, showing us cultural ways, what to find in the woods, certain, floral designs, and how to make, your tobacco pouches and your favorite one. And biggest one was string. She always said, what are you going to do when your pants falls down? She said, this is what they use.
Yeah.
She'd cut one of those off and put it in her belt loop and tie her pants up. Hey, that was pretty good, instead of pulling her pants up all the time running.
Yeah.
But yes, showed us some of that. And like wigwam, she said, yeah, this is what that's used for. Mo's mesh, she called it. Go get that, and put that in the water along with basswood at the time too. She'd use that for certain things, tying stuff up, and then ironwood, getting ironwood so it lasts. It's pretty strong wood. But ironwood they used back then was bigger trees, and they'd use the bark from that and put it on top. So nowadays you see all the environment getting infected with invasive bugs, Japanese beetle, and that one affected the elm trees, them big elm trees we had. So some of them are still dying. You'll see them on side the road, and I always look and I say, "Man, that's really good firewood." You can heat your home with that. Really, really hot wood.
Yeah.
And yeah, she taught us quite a bit. When to get the wood, when to bend it, and even birch bark. Getting that certain time of the year too. And it was like in the spring, like right now. That she said, if you don't get it now, you're gonna have to wait next year. And, you can't just go out there and get it. She goes, you gotta these. They come up like babies. They said certain foods, you can eat out there. Put them in with soups and deer meat and porcupine or raccoon or woodchuck. And yeah, those are real good to eat. Muskrat's like the best for me. And
Really?
yeah, really good meat.
You touch on a bunch of things about like the boarding schools and how we used to do things then and how much it's changed for today. Like, how are you hanging on to that culture today through today's society?
Today's society, I'm very grateful for the grants that were written and that we, that they're here to offset the cost of, certain things in a program. And we utilize one for promoting healthy living, and that brings like regalia making, drumming, and a lot of cultural, just bringing it in and showing the younger ones how to make these items and continue on with the beadwork and, applique classes and sewing and just tons of stuff that just put it there. Kind of do it back to back every month and certain times of the seasons. And but I kind of feel sorry when this grant runs out, but I'll feel happy that the ones that learn these things in there, they'll carry it on like me. When they showed me these things, and I didn't know that, they're actually seeds, really. I came a little bit older, and I started thinking right away, yeah, this is what they were showing me, so it continues on for future generations. Language, too, is a big thing, I'm very grateful to see our young ones speaking fluently today. What happened from, certain families, being taken away at young boarding schools is one thing, and what we had to endure back then, how much it hurt us. We couldn't go to school here because of discrimination, and, it's just on and on stuff that was never taken care of. And one day, Jim Thunder, he told us, he goes, "You guys can't go to school up there no more." He was chairman at the time. When he filed suit against the school, and we all of us ended up getting sent here and there because a lot of families were crying, and it wasn't right. And so, and I later found out as the parents would end up going to jail because we weren't in school, and that was another fight. And so the the lawsuit went as far as into the local sheriff's department, sued them, social services sued them, sued the families, sued the school, sued the state, and we won. And this is where Act 31 comes into play in Wisconsin. At the time, it wasn't just affecting, just us. Other tribes in Wisconsin were going through the same phase, So eventually we won, and here we are today. And it's still there yet, I'm just kind of waiting for somebody to pick that case back up, because it means a lot to our children that are in school. If it's not going to work out, well, let's revisit that school where we were building. Late 80s, we were going through this discrimination, and so we said, well, we're going to build our own school. So this land was designated for a school, and there was a lady, her name was Sister Margaret. She was here to help us get this school K through 12, and it started going. We started seeing the Head Start come in. I said, man, this is real good. We're going to get a school here. But no, it somehow stopped because of, at the time, gaming come along and threw it off the rail and stopped everything. So then that lady was let go, and that's when it stopped. But we had a firekeeper school there that Billy D., Lois Crow and all them ones there, they opened up for ones that couldn't go to school anymore, kind of get their education, homeschool or whatever. Not, but it really didn't work, because they needed to be in class. So some continued to be sent out west, a lot of boarding schools out there. Yeah, but anyway, the Head Start, K through 12 was supposed to have been. And a lot of the cultural events that took place out of that, that was taught. Sid Daniels, he worked with us too. And he really wanted to go up there. I said, yeah, go up there and, be posted up there and help out as much as you can. So he taught a lot too with the younger ones that come through. I remember they talked about a sugar camp, and they wanted to teach the kids that every year. So they did some trees there that they tapped into, and seemed like everybody did it at the time. My grandma and other families, they do the syrup every year, make candy, and he got a little, like a sugar house put up. And at the time, I can read back in a newspaper there, he talked about a octagon building. And he said, these are the ones we used to use. And man, you just go back in history again because of what he told me when we went to the McCord village up in Tripoli. There's a was actually a ARC survey done on this old village, Potawatomi village over by Rhinelander, west of there. He took us over there and kind of explained some things with what went on there, and our families come from there, and sugar camps, and and when we were leaving, there was this blackberry brush, and we couldn't find a cemetery. He was like looking around, and we looked at the blackberry bush and kind of like walked over and looked at, how they were doing, and he goes, hey, the cemetery's right here. So then he started talking about those old ones that were there that he knew, what they used to do. And some of their families come from there to Stone Lake here in Blackwell. That's where these families come from. And he said, yeah, if there wasn't for these ones here that are here in the ground here, we wouldn't be here, he said, right now. And then he was true. He was true at what he was talking about. Yeah, so anyway, that's the history part on that. And some of the stuff is still there. The state protects that site. And then Jim Thunder, he taught us a lot about cultural sites too they still exist in the woods today. Some places he told us to stay out of, and some of the stories that were told about these places, it's true, But it's very cultural sensitive to, go back out and, it's good to go back out there hunting because that's what they taught too. Showed us how to hunt, along with my grandfather too. I told a story, about my grandfather about hunting. It was very important that he taught me how to hunt and what to look for in the woods. Yeah, I was about maybe 10 years old, young age, and he would start cleaning up his guns and put them all out and start cleaning them up and showing me how to clean the guns. And then he left. Where's that guy going, And he said, no, you got to stay here. He goes, I'm going to go far away. I'm going to go hunting out in the woods. I really wanted to go, and so he left. Stayed there, and another time he started cleaning up, so I knew what he was doing. And I took off out in the woods where he went. Because I remember you guys the other day talking about a railroad grade. And that's the road that he would take, but it was a trail through the woods, old railroad grade. That's the railroad grade they pull logs out of on trains, steam trains. And so I took that road. I went all the way back there as a little kid, just walked out there and I hid. And, I can hear him coming like that. And he come up and stopped. He was like looking at me, and he knew right where I was, and I told him, I said, yeah, I'll go hunting with you. And it was already too late. And so he said, well, you got to come along. So I went along with him when we walked way back there by where your grandpa lived, where your mother grew up, back there, because they lived next door to you. It's like probably maybe a good quarter mile away through the woods. And he showed me some springs there, and where Billy Jim lived, all those ones, Julius Daniels, and what's the guy's name, Squay Gizik, and Sunco's. There's quite a few of them just starting to come back,
Yeah.
Listening to all those ones talking, and they would like feed us and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then we'd go back home, and wintertime come around, and my grandmother too, my grandpa was getting kind of too old to go out and hunt, so she'd always tell me, go out there and get something, and showed me how to snare rabbits and how to get them, and same thing with my grandpa, and I took us out there, and he said, never step on their trail. I didn't know what he meant. So he said, if you step on your trail, the rabbits won't use this. So what do? I stepped on the trail. And the next day we went out there. When we hunted there, we went around the hole where we had the snares, went through the swamp, went around the whole area that would scare up any rabbits in there. Plus we'd see one and we'd shoot it. But that one trail there, he said, yeah, I told you not to step on that trail. And there was no rabbit there, but we got rabbits on the other trails, and, yeah.
Why is it important to preserve language, tradition, and our ancestral lands?
Well, the importance of it is to keep it going as a tribal nation, without a language. The United States always said, if you don't know your language, then you don't exist anymore. So that's another reason why it's very strong and very important that we learn the language, even if it's a few words. Jim Thunder always told me, he said, yeah, just say one word every day. If you can't say it, just say it every day. Then the next day, say another word every day. He said, say that 365 days a year. Keep saying that. And then he said, that's how you're going to learn too. And a lot of the young ones today, they're carrying it on. They're very fluent, and I'm very grateful that, Jim Thunder and Billy D and Mary and anybody that took part in the language dictionary and then the wording back in the day in the late 70s and that, 1978, we got the permission to speak our language, to do our cultural practices. So that was around about the time these classes start coming back again. I kind of look at all that, and, before we'd have to be thrown in jail or, our kids get killed because they're speaking language in these boarding schools, and so it's very important that this, is passed down too, the history of it and learning, why not somebody doesn't know too much languages because, that's because it was taken away from us. Mm-hmm. So 1978, and that to us, it's like just yesterday, So you had all those generations that couldn't do that, before us. All those generations was taken away, and then now you look at how many generations it's going to take to get it back through education. So turn their education around and, put language in it. So now you're still fighting against the education part, But yeah, it's still ongoing, and like I say, I'm grateful for the staff we have. We can continue it every day. Every day they're talking the language, and there's more and more that are coming. So there's kids that we mentor. I'm mentoring one right now, and I told them, just go in there and listen, But I didn't tell them what my grandma used to tell me, and she used to pull my ears, Just listen, she said. Yeah, but we got a class of we got 32 staff of 32 today, So I'm very grateful for that. The ones hanging around and learning everything, especially with the grants, offsetting the cost, and what I'd like to see is another school, just continue on, because that's where it started, from our language. Language was education. They worked together, and it came with the education committee. That needs to come back. We shouldn't be, somewhere else trying to practice our education when we're needed here. So I think everything should be funnel right back into the tribe and down into the community center. Just scrap it out and, restructure the whole thing and continue building on there and build a school, because that has a gold mine by itself. I mean, it's tons of education that are out there. A lot of millions and millions of dollars we're kind of missing out on. But yeah, language is very important. Cultural, a lot of the lakes and streams and our earth, and without land we're really nothing really too. But we still have to protect it. I see a lot that they did in the past through land use committee. I think that was established in I'm going to say 1994 or somewhere in here, along with the historical cultural board that came about, housing, all these committees. Just pull them all back together and have one big meeting on one, and focus on a school. Just forget about everything else, and spend our money and invest in ourselves. Keep it going for the future. Your grandkids, all them ones too. So yeah, language is important. It's living. It lives inside you. Just wake it up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
You touched on the maple sugar camp. Is there anything else you want to bring up about? I know you were bringing that back the way Billy Daniels used to do it back in the day. Is there anything you want to bring up about during that season?
Well, when I took this position, I always thought about the sugar camp. How it brought the community together, and not only that, the Head Start and what they did. They always asked about when are we going to do sugar camp again? So I went up there and looked around at it, opened up the buildings, and had to cut the lock off and look inside, and it was still there yet. Everything was there. All you needed to do was a sap and fire up the stove, and then you were on your way. And it's like looking at that, and I asked around again, and I said, yeah, we should open up the Billy D's sugar camp, And they said, well, you're gonna let them rest, I said, let them rest. So next year came again. I asked the same thing again. Well, let's go up there and look. I said, I think he's done resting. Let's go up there. Went up there and showed him the sugar camp, and so that's how it started back up again. But the garage area, what he had built up there, was all full of stuff in there. Like some of the tribal members said, yeah, he liked to pack rats, so that's where he kept all his stuff. But there was stuff in there that wasn't no good, And there was like 30 years of mice and squirrels that lived in there.
Yeah.
So we ended up cleaning that all out, and it was like really good in there. We washed it up, and we asked council, assist, and they did. And they seen the importance of it from the Head Start, what they were looking for, and that's what we made. We brought it back for them. And it's a little bit bigger today, and it's more modern, I guess. Other people, they use hoses, and so we tried out hoses, and it works, and we continue on. And Billy D's old stove, we refurbished it, and we put in new fire brick, and it looked like he tried to repair it with just cement. And so I had Jamie Tuckwa up there go up and bust it apart and put new firewall in there and brick in it. So we got getting some more pans, and gonna have it that way back, bring it back the way it was, how it used to boil in there, and then go over to the next one. And so
Yeah, it's good to know that you're bringing that back. I think our kids were involved in some of that because they're in Taganis and Rising Sun. So it's good to see that they're out there in the woods seeing how that's done. I appreciate that. You stay involved with the tribal community. What do events like the powwows, MMIP, and the sobriety walks. What do those mean to our community?
To me, it means healthy lifestyle, healthy lifestyle. But, getting there is setting an awareness of what's going on today. My last position, I got to witness death, in my own hands. And, that's what kind of brought me to a point of we need to do something too. Opioids, alcoholism. It's not just the opioids, it's alcohol. Alcohol's the number one killer. It's always been the number one killer. It kills everything, they say. And it kills up families, knocks. It's not right. And we ended up starting a sobriety walk. And this walk was to set awareness to all those ones there that are suffering from addictions and that. We sat down at Jim Thunder one day, and me and George Cisneros, and I didn't know George at the time was, wanted help, so that was the help that he got. And today he's still walking that recovery road. It's a very powerful thing to do is go on this recovery road. They call it Red Road. You deal with a lot of things, and mainly yourself. But yeah, a lot of that went into opioid addiction, and I see some other like bands. They started up the missing, murdered Indigenous people, and then I think Destiny Alloway started a walk in that one. So now that's getting bigger, along with the motorcycle runs. We're going to have a big, huge run in June. It was grateful to see us expanding in that way. What we do here, setting awareness to all of that plays a role in. It's not a traditional life to be, drugging and alcohol and being angry and mad, because all those are spirits that are bad. Kind of, they eventually it just comes back someday and haunts us in a way because of how we carried ourselves, and it affects our health. It brings them diabetes and all of that. Even though when what we were given back in the day was commodities full of sugar, and today yet it's full of sugar. I had to decline on the elder meals because it contains all sugar. They say it's healthy, but it's not healthy. You take a elder meal and test the sugar in it, you'll see the contents. I don't know, it's just a lot of things there. See, what's the MMIW and the sobriety walk, and what the other one you said?
Powwows.
Powwows are really good too. Bringing that culture back with the younger kids. I was glad to see those younger ones, because through the grant we have, that these young ones can make their own outfits and see them dance out there, and encourage them and keep this alive and going too. Up the road, they're going to remember all these things. Even though if you don't see it, it's in their heart, it's in their blood. All of us, what we carry in our blood, right away it takes over when you start doing spiritual things and cultural items. It's there. So a lot of them we promote all that and kind of give us a story of where we come from. How we shared, with other, our bands there, Odawa and Ojibwe. We share the same story. Languages are similar in a way, and where we come from and what we did. Looking at our ancestors, thinking how they were when they had to walk. That's me and you walking 800 and some miles, 888 miles they walked. Had to, by gunpoint. The ones that died on their way there, buried on a spot overnight when they stopped. You think about all that horror that went along with that and how it affected all of us. And And takes us back to when Billy said, if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't be here. So we're the ones that were still fighting, and I remember when they had census, and my grandma said, no, no, she tried to tell us to hide, but we'd have to be counted. But the ones before her weren't counted. They were hiding. That's some of the things that they learn and taught down too, is you got to hide. Don't be seen in that way, because they'll come and get you, take you away and take you down to Oklahoma or Kansas. And then they shared us another story too of where they come from. I hear them say, they couldn't find the medicines because there's nothing down there. It wasn't nothing. It's all prairie. It's flat land, So they did what they had to. So each gathering, we give them medicines that they need. And, there's just a lot of history behind that. Opioids and alcohol, and it's been killing us since. If you look at alcohol ratio death in America, it's the number one thing over opioids and that. Then the abuse that it carries, women get abused, men get abused because of alcohol and drugs, and elder abuse. It still happens today yet. That's a learned thing through generation after generation, and it just gets mixed up because of you think about 1978. We got to do these things. We got to practice our religion. I'm thankful for all those old ones that held that inside of them, in their heart. Hid that in their heart, where nobody can't find that. So one day that came about, and they start teaching us these things. And that's what I like to continue to do with all of us here, even them young ones that are, coming up, asking for, help in a way. And springtime coming up here, and that's really good to, get out there,
You kind of touched on this a little bit. Why is it important to continue to support both youth and our elders in our community?
It's very important all the way down as far as you can go to help them as they learn. They're young kids, coming up of age, and the elders, showing them that way. Storytelling, I think, is one big thing that should happen, of where you come from, where your family comes from. Back in the day, like I said, a lot of them come from Chicago or Milwaukee or things like that. They were sent there because it was called, what is that? Relocation funding that was given from the government, saying that you can go to the city and go work. You can go learn a trade. You can go use this money to go there. So little that they know, they went there and the money ran out. So they're stuck. They had to find, work and kind of continue on, and the government kind of stalled things out again, then they learned that process and brought it back, and our culture suffered again, because of alcoholism, what it did, resentments and all of that hatred that comes from that alcohol, because they didn't know, because they were, drunk or something, under the influence. So yeah, it's hard, but we still deal with it, and then we just have to put it away. Culture is really our prevention from all that.
How do you help when the community needs support?
Being that advocate, being that person there to listen. My experience is that when I grew up, them spiritual advisors listened, to me and told me these things, and being there at, like, say, if they go to jail or something, try to be there and go to jail with them. And then when they come out, be there, maybe write them a letter or something like that, and kind of help out. I think today, I'm not sure if they still practice that yet, though. but being that advocate, especially domestic abuse, I can remember when I worked security and that there was some domestic issues that came up, and this one was raped, so we had to get a female officer to come and help. So that female officer stayed there, took that person, got her help, went to the hospital, and stayed with her. And then when she got out, was there again, because that was that help that she needed, that advocacy, because that's the only thing she can trust at the time to get help. And so it continued on, and they just refer them over to either our prevention staff, and because that's what they're here for, to help too. We can't really force it on them, but still it's there. But yeah, it's just a continuation with support groups, bigger support groups. It's hard today to do these things. Back in the day, we always had support groups. That's when we started out, and I think it was the early 80s was AODA came here, and DC and Dolly Phillips, they were our counselors back then, and they seen that too going on. So then they started that AODA program. Yeah, so eventually it got bigger today, and sobriety events. We started a seasonal feast, but now I see it's a feast every month. So, but I don't know. There's a lot of things you can do with this money today, rather than benefit other people, put it back in the tribe where we really need it, make a treatment center, make these things, that at one time they asked for a residential treatment center, and it's still there. There's still minutes to that yet. That was to be down by Campbellsport, because people were getting out of prisons, or it was in the middle of the state where everybody can go, not just our community, but other tribal communities. They can utilize that. But yeah, just continue on at that, I guess.
Yeah, that was a really good answer, and you kind of got that well-rounded perspective on all those different aspects within the tribe. So I really appreciate that comment on the support.
Well, I got to watch my brothers and sister grow up and what they did, and what they were teaching. And my one brother, he was a clinical social license, social worker, and what he did, and kind of learned from him, when I sobered up, because he was one of the ones that sobered me up. He called cops, and next thing you know, I was on my way. 3-party petition, to be sobered up. I was mad for a while, but after, when I sobered up, I had, spiritual advisors again step in that I never knew that existed, that understood who I was. They helped me. After a while, you just get strong, and that those feelings go away, because you're very spiritual, things that help out, and they come around and show you, and they show you things, cleared up the road somewhere, and stuff like that. It's already done, just go on in life, even, sleeping, wake up, say a prayer. Maybe somebody out there's asking, and that prayer will go a long way in that way. Yeah. But they always said somebody will come along and help too, just pray. That's true.
Yeah. I 100% agree with that. Thank you for all that wisdom. That was really good recap of everything. How did you get interested in artwork, such as oil painting? We have one of your pieces here, but we're just kind of curious on how you got into painting, and it's so amazing. You have a lot of talent. So how did you get into that type of creative expression?
My biggest teacher was my grandmother. Like I said, I come back, she lived in this little house, and she had a wood burning stove, and that's how she lived. She had her own. Well, her refrigerator was downstairs. Potatoes were kept in the ground in a cellar, and all the stuff that we did during the summertime, we'd collect berries, but she'd use those dyes and berries, and like certain barks of the tree or certain plants, and I can identify them just by looking at them, and I say, yeah, that's a dye. So it used that dye and paint stuff in the winter months, and but yeah, she'd have all the food downstairs, and it takes me back. I'll get to your question there, but it takes me back when my grandpa. I was sitting there in a chair. I was hungry, and come from a family of 9, and so I always went down there, and my grandpa looked in the refrigerator. He did that like 3 times. My grandma hollered at him, there's nothing in that refrigerator. Why you keep opening that up? And then he said, yeah, that boy's hungry. And so that was it. She said, yeah, come here. She said, open this door up. So I opened that door, and she goes, turn that light on. It was like a stairway. She said, turn that light on there. Turned it on, and all the food was downstairs in that cellar. All, mason jar full of, garden goods that we did over the, summer. And she said, yeah, see all those berries? I said, yeah. She goes, that's why I told you what I was going to do with them. She goes, that's why I told you not to eat all those berries. And but yeah, she showed us how to can and, stuff like that. But in the winter months, she'd show us how to do artwork. And she would tell us a story, and we'd have to put it down. We don't want to write it, but just see in our minds, She said, talked about, or her old homestead and what it looked like in there, and we'd have to draw it. So then we had these little houses, and she talked about deer. She had a pet deer, and so we had to draw that little pet deer, and then it ended up being a big buck, I guess.
Yeah.
And they call him Bucky.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she taught us about that, and how to dye, and eventually the art. And she said, yeah, when you dream, she said, try to write that dream down. And so get spiritual dreams, and I try to write it down right away. I try it, no matter how much I'll wake up. Yeah, I remember that when I get up in the morning. I won't remember nothing. So it's very important that you write that dream down when you first get up out of that dream. Write the details and the colors. Those are very important. She said the colors tell you things. And eventually, she started telling us about the colors, what they meant, and how your life's going to be that day. And, the spiritual dreams like that, such as this one here. This one here is a dream. When I sober up, I talk about alcoholism in this dream. And each one of those, what I have in there is all made from the earth, everything. I sobered up, I did this painting, and it represents a lot in there. I can tell you a lot of things in there that are spiritual meanings to me, what I've seen and what are happening today. You can look up in the clouds, you see all those spirits up there, and you look down below, like in the water, and then there's also, meaning in the ground too. There's 4 levels all over, up and down. The sacred pipe, prayers, 7 teachings. It can just go on and on about what it says, a different meaning, a different life. So that's what that means to me. I did a lot of paintings. You spoke of one, or you seen me in a paper years ago when you did some research, and and I remember that one. It was a residential treatment center. It was like a halfway house. Oh man, Fuji. Okay, Fuji's a very big influence in my life. And I was a very big influence in his life. I did not know that until I went into this treatment center. I didn't know where it was. I didn't know what I was doing. You know, I was gone. Alcohol took me. Drugs took me. All of that. And he's, well, he was in this treatment center. And I remember him. I used to party and, party with him, drink and do all the drugs and all this stuff, And he was in there, and I asked him, I thought he can help me with getting high or something like that. But he told me, he said, man, you must be effing nuts, he said. And I thought he was just in there by himself. And I went back again, asked him again. Was, hey, come here once. I'll show you something in my office, he said. I said, office? Man. So he went in there, and he said, I'm a counselor now. He said, I put all that stuff away. And he said, you know why? I said, no. He said, because of you. I said, because of me? Why? What did I do? He said, well, I was laying in this jail, and I seen your calendar in this jail. I was in jail for OWI for 45 days. I made this calendar, so when I got out, and but same jail, that cell he was in, he made it to that cell. And he said, I was looking up, I was broken down. Didn't know where to go. Nobody listened to me. I was crying, and, all those feelings that were going through me, hurt, all this stuff. No, nothing. Nobody listened to me. He said, I seen this picture on the wall. He said, you did a spiritual picture. Pencil art, similar to something like this, but a little different maybe. Mm-hmm. He said, I kept that. He said, you know what I did with that? He said, I used that in spiritual teachings of what I seen, what you drew here. He said, what's inside of there that went into my heart, made me see things, He said, made me get rid of all that anger and all that hate and jealousy, all that. So, all that went away, he said, because of you. I was thinking, me. Then he goes, you know what else? I said, what? He goes, it took me to college. I went to college for this. He said, and I seen myself. And so he sobered up. That's what his field was, AODA. And he helped me quite a bit. So anyway, after a while, we started getting all this money. And here he is up. He's a judge. And he continued on using my story. And I got to helping him in there because he wanted me to smudge his clientele off, or the ones that come in there that were broken down. Mm-hmm. And I'd help him out too as that advocate again. Mm-hmm. In that way I did not know, mm-hmm. But we helped each other out. So my painting is through dreams. There's only one of a kind in the world. Mm-hmm. That's from the teachings from my grandmother. Mm-hmm. And paintings of, I did billboards, huge billboards, like probably, what was that one? 40 by 20, I think it was. It was for the mine. Oh. The tribe asked me if I could do one. I said, yeah, I guess I can. Mm-hmm. But I had to, figure out a easel. So I built an easel in my yard, and I, made this big painting that represented the sledge, arsenic that came out of the mine. And they posted it across from the brush run back in the day. There should be pictures somewhere of that, They didn't want it to be real, like, I don't know, they said mystical, I said, well, I'll do something. Yeah. So I used the deer and animals. I had the animals. I thought about the clans, how it will affect all the clans. Mm-hmm. So when you look at that painting, that's what it represents. But yeah, it's artwork is a form of, communication too, therapeutic, and, it helps a lot of these kids. And mm-hmm. not only that, carving and, pipe making, and, it goes into a lot of things, sculptures and welding and So it's good. Indian art today is, one of a kind in the whole world. This painting's the only one in this world.
Yeah, it's an inspiration just to look at your art pieces and to know that there's so much meaning behind each stroke that you have on that.
How did this get here? You know, I'm going to tell you a story about my artwork. A lot of it was found in a dump, and it was brought back to me in a way that I did not know. You know, but yeah, this one here is I did one in Koinonia when you first asked, that spiritual one there. That represent the serenity of who I was, what I seen when I went through that treatment center. And then the last treatment center I went through, my brother put me through. Court ordered me to go, and it was the same facility. And that one, I didn't want to leave. I told myself, I don't feel right. I don't want to leave. So then elders from the community here came there, and they were with my mother. And they said, yeah, we come to watch you graduate, and you can do all these good things, And graduate from what? They said, yeah, they're going to present you with a sobriety coin, and you successfully completed a program here, and we come to support you, and we want to see you do good things. And I'm glad that you're sobered up, and, you got a new life.
Yeah.
So anyway, they gave me this coin, and I stood up. I talked about my life and what I went through, and how I was healing, and Fuji, and the medicines and stuff like that, and artwork, and I told him, I said I wasn't ready to leave. I said I'm not even packed up to leave. I said my stuff is still in there, and so then they all start kind of crying and clapping, and their joy. They said, we're glad that you said that to us, because we thought you were going to go back out there and use again. Because they thought in a way that, he's going to go back out there and drink. So that's been 31 years ago. Been drug and alcohol free. No alcohol, no drugs, no heroin, none of that. No cocaine, nothing. It just, I don't even take medication for anything. It's, my life has just changed. But eventually, diabetes came in through medicines, healing medicines. I did away with diabetes. I'm not diabetic, so I'm living healthy, the way it should be, But that's through being sober, no smoking, nothing like that, And then that artwork, I went through all of that. I left the painting there. The last 30 days, I stayed there. They said, well, you're going to stay here? And he said, well, you want to go to college? I said, well, all right, let's go to college. And so they put me through college. I went to Nicolay College, and I start going through there. And they said, man, Fuji said, yes, yeah, I told you what you can do, he said. So after that, I got out of that treatment center. I left a painting there, and it's on the wall. I did it right on the wall, and it represents who I am again, with the clans, with the water, and, my clan, Beaver clan, and air and water. I can live in air, I can live in water. So. So those are the two paintings I had there, but I did a lot of them. I got a lot of pencil art. I got ink art. I could probably do an eagle in probably 30 seconds. It was just with my finger and ink or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just what my grandmother taught me. So I can go on a lot about art.
Yeah.
But I teach it today too. So.
Yeah.
Yep.
I love that. I love all the stories, the inspiration from your grandma, and your story about walking the red road and helping and supporting others too. I commend you on your journey, and thank you for giving back to our community too, because we really need that leadership and that trail you've already walked through. It helps our community. One other question we have is, do you have a regalia, and what does that mean? Like, what does it mean to you? Are there things on your regalia that represent things that of who you are or your traditional cultural background?
To me, this started way back when we're young, growing up here. You know, Billy D and Jim Agaby and Billy Jim, and all them ones. We used to hear them sing. You know, my grandmother would say, "Yeah, we're having ceremonies," and then we'd hear that drum all the way down there. You know, and then eventually the powwows come in at the dance bowl, and they started us out with like regalia, how to dance, and things like that. Cookie too was another influence with my life, and I did art again. I did a T-shirt for her for the first powwow at Devil's Lake. So it was. I can still see it yet in my mind, and that's how we started dancing. And around about that time, we got sent out to school, and we continued on with like Flandreau powwow club that they had there, and coming back here, and but alcohol kind of taken it away. And but what they used to tell me about regalia is that what you see, who you dance for. Back then they didn't dance competition, so I learned from them ones. It's not about how good you are, how fast you are, or how much money you could make and stuff like that. It wasn't intended for that.
Mm-hmm.
What they taught back then was looking at flowers, floral designs, your favorite, medicines, that you see out there in the woods, especially now this time of the year when these plants, they're babies, they're coming up.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe go out there and draw one, and you could do your part of your regalia, put that on your regalia, and just keep going.
Mm-hmm.
You'll see it at design. You'll see yourself come through that.
Mm-hmm.
And when you dance, it's the prayers. You dance for those ones that can't dance, and that's what I go there for, is the prayer and the feeling and getting rid of helping one another out and just feeling good. Feel good about yourselves, and so a lot of things can come through dance.
Mm-hmm.
My grandma always said, just dance. Tell yourself, just dance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really appreciate that perspective, because sometimes we lose ourselves in the competition of things, but it was really intended to bring community together and bring that that dancing for our ancestors and dancing for future generations, and that health behind it too.
Mm-hmm.
What advice and hopes do you have for the future generation and our tribal community?
To me, make the right choices, stay away from drugs and alcohol and the ones that are using drugs and alcohol, because you'll get pulled in no matter what. You say you're not going to do it, but there's always that spirit that says you can experience this, and once you do, you turn around, and that's the end for some,
Mm-hmm.
But just the advice of continue on with education. Educate yourself, because when I was growing up, we never had this money to go to college. They never gave us money to go to college. If you're lucky, you can go. You would have went. But today, the tribe pays for college. You invest in yourself with your monies that you get. You can turn it around and invest and put it away. Maybe an IRA account, and get back around about 19 or not. You turn 36 or something. You can live off of that for the rest of your life. And just getting education and coming back to work for your people again.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very proud of everybody that is here working today, because you guys were sent out that way, and now you're coming back and leading for future generations, all them young ones that are not being born, and like our language department, they're taking off. They'll come back, stronger and stronger. Every day they get stronger. I can see that.
Mm-hmm.
There's no stopping them now. You know, I can't tell them what to do. They already know what they're gonna do. You know, and
Yeah.
that's what makes me feel happy, along with a lot of our elders.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. That's all I had for questions, but is there anything else that you want to bring up that we haven't talked about?
No, it's good to have me come here, and maybe next time I can, we can go out and by the outside somewhere, where we come from, how we, were raised, and what's out there, in the woods, and that's where I grew up. That was my playground, and things that come out back there, and what I can teach through that, certain woods, like pipe making, or sacred bowl medicine, and a lot of those they're out there yet. It's just waiting for everybody to come back and pick it up.
Yeah. Yeah. If that's an invite, I would love to come with you.
There's a lot of our lands that are out there that are very important, that you guys know these lands. There's even lands that we purchased because of the mining. I remember they sued us for $36 million, I think it was. Said we owed this to them, and we didn't. That came with the mine. There's this big patch of 880 acres of land that's it's a wetland, really. I think wild rice grows there too, I believe. And that's really good to see that. But yeah, a lot of the land that's here, it needs to be told what you guys have out there. Because without none of this, if you don't know none of this, then, someday, you're going to have to, because it's there. Without land, we're nothing, So protect the land and boundaries, and, our land base is a lot bigger than what it was when I was growing up because of this, lawsuit and stuff like that. Traded lands, or even acquisition of getting other lands that are out there, that are very sacred from our ancestral lands. Those are important too, because they contain old cemeteries of our chiefs, our chiefs from back and before 1832, the treaties and that are buried, and they're still there. That's what we have to protect. Yeah, it can go a long way with on history, and a lot of historic stuff that we can talk about, that's out there, historic properties, and where you come from. It's very important that you see that. That's what was told to me, so I want to teach it to you guys too.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just like to say thank you, miigwech bodewadmi. Igwin.
Miigwech, I appreciate your time.
Okay.
From the fire, from the drum, we remember who we are. Through the smoke, through the sound, our heartbeat carries on. Stand strong, voices rise from the earth to the sky. Neshanabe, Neshanabe, Bodewadami, Neshanabe.